Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
This week on the Major Spoilers podcast, I sit down for a chat with Matt Brawley, creator of the hit Disney animated show Amphibia. We talk about his career working on Gravity Falls and Big City Greens, and of course, Amphibia itself, a huge favorite among everyone at the Major Spoilers HQ. This is all part of the new Art of Amphibia book arriving in stores on March 25th. Then later in the show, Matthew Rodrigo and I talk about Ultimate X-Men by Peach Momoko. You're listening to issue 1118 of the Major Spoilers podcast. I am super excited to be talking with you today, Matt Brawley, because holy crap, you have been, whether my kids know it or not, whether my family knows it or not, but you have played a major role in their entire youth, their entire growth cycle of life. I mean, from Gravity Falls to Amphibia to Big City Greens, which was another one that was a huge hit for my middle schooler. Your shows ran in rotation almost nonstop for 10 years, 13 years.
I guess I have to apologize for that.
No, thank you, because here's the thing. And as the creator of Amphibia, there were a lot of things that I saw from Gravity Falls that moved in. Specifically, you start out small, and then the story kind of expands into this larger world of just myth building and, the whole Anne is the one kind of thing. That's the kind of storytelling that I really like. And so no need to apologize for telling great stories, even though they have to take place over 3 seasons, because that is the thing that...
It's intriguing and funny that you like it, and I'm so glad. It was sort of a necessity for us, especially Gravity Falls and Amphibia. It was sort of our way of like Trojan horsing like these epic stories within these episodic sitcoms.
Yeah,
so
because
it's sort of need-based.
Because before Gravity Falls hit our radar, we were basically Phineas and Ferb a lot with the kids. Yeah. And, Phineas and I have nothing wrong with Phineas and Ferb. I think their adventures are great. It's great in creativity. But it was always just like, oh, we kind of reset. There's nothing that's big world building stuff. Yes, there are some things that are referenced back, but it was just kind of like these one and done stories. But when we look at Gravity Falls, they start out as these little one and dones, and then we start to build this mystery, and then the mystery compiles, and then we're adding on to things. And the same way in Amphibia, where, Anne just shows up, she's been transported to another world, and I think it was in the second episode or the second half of the first episode, I think it was a double feature, where we get a little bit of a flashback to how she wound up here.
That's exactly right.
We don't get a full story. Oh man, believe me, when I say that this. So again, I'm going to probably be a little bit too fanboyish this time, but literally my youngest son watched Amphibia on repeat, like nonstop. Like he was excited when there was a new episode about ready to drop. And when it was the big finale, he wanted to be woken up, early so he could watch it. And
oh, that's so sweet.
He won't admit it. I mean, he won't admit it now because he's like, 14 and
18. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. 14 and 18. Those are the ages of my sons, 14 and 18. But the youngest, he won't admit it. But Amphibia certainly has an influence on him wanting to be a herpetologist when he goes to college. Yeah. So, so he can enjoy it from just, here's Anne having adventures with the planters, and we get to introduced into some scary elements and some exciting elements. But from an adult perspective, it's like, oh no, this stuff is all tied together, and they end up going on a giant quest at the end, and it's really dramatic, and I like stories that build that way. What is your approach to that, or what is the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like Lego piece, like storytelling, right? Where you've got all these little like bits and bobs, and that hopefully, God willing, at the end of the show, you take a step back and like you can see how they were all building towards something really satisfying.
Yeah.
It's funny because, I mean, because you were there and you were consuming this kids content at the time. But when Gravity Falls came out, there hadn't been a show like that for like decades.
Right.
That really had, something beyond what I'll just call like Simpsons continuity, which is like there's continuity. Like Phineas and Ferb has continuity, but like you said, it's not really building towards these gigantic payoffs in the way that like Gravity Falls did. And I remember at the time, and Gravity Falls 2 was before Steven Universe, which also did a similar thing. Gravity Falls was really cutting edge in that it presented these episodic stories that were great. Like you get a fun 22-minute episode that has setups and payoffs and is very satisfying. But there were these stingers and through lines that would build to these, like, I would say almost like movie quality climaxes. Like,
yeah, most definitely. Each season had something like that.
Yeah, these absolute like banger episodes that like you needed to like take a break after watching them, sort of.
Well, yes, except for, I mean, we can argue, I don't want to get you in trouble, but we can argue that the Disney release schedule for Gravity Falls was very mishandled, but
oh yeah, well, I mean, that was it's so funny, every showrunner feels like their release was mishandled. I feel like on Amphibia we also had like a weird release. On Gravity Falls, I know what you're talking about. Wasn't there like after the episode Summerween, there was like an 8-month hiatus, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and it's just like, no, stop it. Or else they would repeat things in a weird schedule, so so it's like once a month there was like a new episode or something like that, and it was super frustrating for a while until they settled down, and maybe that is kind of the problem with new animated shows, where what kind of backing does a studio or a network, in this case Disney, give Amphibia when it's like, well, this has not been tested. Sure, you worked on Gravity Falls, but we're not sure about this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the release of our first season, they tried something called the simulated binge format, which sounds painful, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what they wanted to do was sort of mimic the idea of you watching a bunch of episodes back to back. Because when Amphibia premiered in, like, 2019, I think. See, I don't even remember. Netflix was taken over. They were totally eating Linear's lunch. So Disney was like, well, let's try a simulated binge where we release a bunch of episodes in a short period of time. So in our case, it was 20 episodes in a month. So it was like 2 little stories a day, every day for a month. And then they just hosed out the entire season. The big flaw in that plan was that the simulated binge couldn't be controlled. So it was still cable. You had to like tune in. And then you could only watch the episodes that were, on the air. So it was like a really flawed strategy. But because they were losing so much market share, they had to try something.
Yeah. Well, and then COVID hit, and then that forced everybody onto streaming. And
totally.
I can't remember. I know that my youngest was watching this when it was on cable. But I know that as soon as it hit on the streaming, that he just totally switched over that, because you're right. That was a problem of what day and time is the newest episode going to be.
Totally. They tried to keep cable exclusive. So what we had was a deal where the episodes, the entire season had to air on linear before it went to streaming. So your son would have had to watch it on Disney Channel. Yeah. And then when it was all done, like a few weeks later, it would all show up on Disney Plus, and then he could watch it. That
definitely was what was going on in our house, both with that and Gravity Falls, and with Big City Greens as well. Yeah. Which again, that's the other one that you've worked on too, that has a big impact on our household, just because of the fun storytelling.
Yeah, and we're all kids of Gravity Falls. Like Chris Houghton, one of the creators of Big City Greens, he was a board artist on Gravity Falls, and so was I. So you can just see the threads that, like, these seem like the children or the distant cousins of Gravity Falls, like sensibility wise, design wise.
And that's something that, again, maybe as an older viewer that is picked up on, because, we go from Gravity Falls to Amphibia, and I'm like, man, this feels like Gravity Falls. And my youngest would be like, yeah, it kind of does. And then a few weeks later he'd go, oh yeah, that's because the creator also worked on Gravity Falls. And so he's, learning to look things up and on his own. And then same way with Big City Greens, that comes out, and it's like, oh, this kind of has a similar feel to this. And it's like, yes, the same people worked on this, Dad. And I don't know how many times I have to tell you. So.
Let me educate you, Dad. Father. Yeah. So Gravity Falls ended, and like I was looking for a show to roll off onto that was similar, and there really wasn't anything. So that's another reason why you would see these Gravity Falls likes pop up, is because like Gravity Falls was finished. It was so like perfect and satisfying. Yeah. But the creator was like, I'm donezo with this. So like we were all so in love with this kind of story and the way it was told, we had to go like make our own, sort of,
Well, and I think not Gravity Falls, sorry, Big City Greens, I think kind of did that. Maybe not to the extent that you did with Amphibia, but it still had some story building that kept building as
it
they
totally
have to
does.
move back into the country. And
there's a crazy, the country, they had a big country switch up, which, I can't tell you how much of a big swing that is for a show like Amphibia or Big City Greens, where basically every show, to stay on budget, has what we call like a home base, like the house.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's the Simpsons living room with the couch. And if you see a show like abandon that like took guts, like honestly, like
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, like for us going to LA in season 3, or for Big City Greens going to the country in their season 3, like that was an all hands on deck, like big decision, But I was going to say that's kind of what you set up in the first season, right? It's like, and you have to stay here until the mountains clear. Yeah. And then in season 2, you go out and you explore the greater world, and we start to realize, oh no, there's more than just the swampland that she's living in. And then you go to LA. So yeah. Yes. Season 2 almost killed us because of that reason. Road trip shows are like incredibly difficult for animation, because it's like you have to invent new locations every week, basically.
So let's take a step back. When did you realize that you wanted to do animation?
Yeah, so I was kind of a sick kid, and I was indoors a lot and really encouraged to draw, because it was like, well, I can't go outside and, play rugby or whatever, then you can stay in here and draw Mortal Kombat characters. So I did a lot of that, like even very, very young. You know what I mean? Like, this is just me having fun. And your artistic journey really starts when like your mom or your dad puts a drawing on the fridge or something. Like that's kind of like, oh my God, like somebody thought this was good enough to put on, put on display. Yeah, totally. So from there, I was sort of like, I'm an artist, I guess. And, I'm like the best, like, artist in my class, like in elementary school, and blah, blah, blah. It really wasn't until high school where we had a fellow come on a career day who worked at Pixar, and he drew Lumiere, like from Beauty and the Beast, on the chalkboard. And he was like, $80,000 a year, it's possible. And we all like cheered, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah.
But he was such a nice guy. His name was Bobby Podesta. I think he's still at Pixar, actually. He's one of the like really early guys. Like he animated on the original Toy Story, so he's been there for decades. He was so encouraging. He sort of gave me a little kind of like a map of like, hey, you want to do this program and you want to go to this school if you're really serious about animation.
And how old were you at this time?
How old was I?
Yeah.
Sophomore in high school. So
okay.
I would have been your son's age, like 14, 15-ish.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it really was like an old wizard who had been on an adventure, giving like a kid like a map and being like, well, here's what I did, but go off and do your own thing. So I started taking like life drawing classes at the local community college. My dad was so sweet. He would drive me. And I'll never forget like my first nude model. It was like an old man. And I remember, here I am, like this 14-year-old or 15-year-old, and I'm going to do my first like nude drawing session. And I'm just like nervous as hell. Like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? This isn't Kansas anymore. Like everyone's an adult here. Anyway, the model comes out and it's this old man in a robe. And I remember just being like, there's no going back. And he like threw off the robe and we all started drawing. And I was like, I can do this.
Nice.
But yeah, from there, I really put a lot of my focus into getting into animation. I went to, this summer school program called Inner Spark, which was basically the CalArts summer school for high schoolers.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, I went to CalArts. I went all 4 years there. Right out of school, I started working at DreamWorks Feature.
Wow. And so is that based on portfolio, or was it pretty much CalArts basically is the feeder? Like, hey, whatever graduates you have, we bring them in.
Do you mean for DreamWorks specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So DreamWorks, and it was all portfolio. Everything was super competitive. So for DreamWorks, they had like, you had to do a test. And of course it was on spec. Everything was free. So you would do this storyboarding test and you would submit it. And if they liked you enough, they would bring you in for some kind of training program. So I was lucky enough to be one of 3 kids chosen to go into that program.
So the nice thing about going into storyboard, though, is you kind of are in that mid space between writing and full animation, because you kind of then get to direct the way that the piece might end up visually on the screen, not necessarily being the director of the show.
Wow. Yes. Succinctly put. I mean, that was maybe one of the best descriptions of like what the advantages to being a storyboard are. So if you want to clip that
Okay.
and just just say like, this is endorsed. No, that was a lovely description. Yes. Storyboarding is amazing because it really is the marriage of writing and visual storytelling, and also a little bit of directing. Cause like you really are putting the camera in places, and you really are getting a feeling for some editing. So yeah, 100% what you said.
And so then that leads to, after working with DreamWorks, that leads you to Alex Hirsch and Gravity Falls. And you then get to move into, were you in the writer's room with that, or were you just straight up just the director of some of the episodes?
So what happened was I was working at DreamWorks, and I had a little bit of ennui because I was working on a movie that I didn't feel was pushing me enough. And I was very young. I was like 22, Stephen, like when I graduated. And so I'm here and I'm working at this job and I'm just not feeling it. And then Alex Hirsch invites a bunch of us from DreamWorks over to Disney because he's trying to poach us. You know what I mean? He's trying to poach storyboard artists. So I go with a group of guys. And honestly, out of like the 6 people that I went with, I think I was the only one who was actually looking for an out. He pitched the show. He said it's Twin Peaks, you know what I mean, meets, X-Files for kids. And I was so smitten that I immediately like took a board test and got the job and quit DreamWorks.
Nice.
So I was a storyboard artist for season 1. And this kind of nice thing happened on season 1 where, Alex started noticing, Alex Hirsch, who's a really great friend and mentor of mine now, he started to notice that we had really similar sensibilities. So he started giving me little assignments, like little extra bits to do. And I think near the end of season 1, he actually had me sit down with an episode in editorial that was way over. So it's like, this episode's 26 minutes, Matt, it needs to be 22. Just start hacking away at it. Do something, right? And so that was actually my first taste of, I would say, writing, because, editing is writing. So I'm in there and I've got this like behemoth of an episode, and it's only in editing it down that I begin to recognize what the actual important parts of the story are. Because like when you got to get 4 minutes out of this thing, you're like, this joke got to go. This joke's got to go.
Yeah.
Does this scene even matter? You know what I mean? So like it really was story boot camp for me. And then we developed such a good rapport and relationship, me and Alex, that like season 2, he bumped me up to director, and I was doing all kinds of editorial work from then on.
Gravity Falls, huge success, as you said. There's a bunch of people that come out of that show. Do you feel like you had a golden ticket when you went to go pitch Amphibia, or was this something that was like, well, we're not sure about this. This guy's only worked on really Gravity Falls.
Yeah, no golden ticket, unfortunately. And like, honestly, like even now, after having made 3 seasons of like a very successful show, like I still don't feel like I have a golden ticket. I'm still searching for that thing. So if you let me know. So basically, the answer is no, mostly because Amphibia was my 3rd pitch to Disney. I pitched like 2 things before Amphibia, and they just totally bounced off them. You know what I mean? So it was really the idea of Amphibia that got them really excited. But even after they optioned Amphibia and we went into development, we had a lengthy development period that was longer than most shows, mostly because we all couldn't agree on what the appeal of the show was. Like I felt strongly the appeal of the show was seeing this kind of stuck-up girl in this crunchy, like horrifying little world. But they really like, the studio really wanted like something a little bit more light on its feet, something more comedic, and something a little bit brighter and optimistic. So they kept trying to push Anne, the main character, into being a little bit more of like, she loves it here, or like maybe she has a very positive attitude. But then for me, I was like, well, you've sucked the contrast out of the project, So we went back and forth for a long time on Amphibia in development. The only silver lining there was that by the time the show was in production, we all had a really good idea of like what made the show work.
Oh, good. Because that's what I like about Anne's arc is that she does go from, I hate this place is horrible, to eventually going, hey, this is my second home. If I never get home, then I can be with all of these people. You know, some of them are bad. And she does find her friends.
100%. And she like shoplifts in the first episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think that a lot of shows, especially kids shows, where the protagonist is just sort of a nice person, struggle to kind of like signal to the audience what the journey is here at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's a trap that a lot of, especially action shows, where like the hero is like, well, we're going to stop the bad guy. And I'm like, you're not the most compelling character I've ever seen.
Yeah, there is a lot of growth. I mean, so that is the thing that about all of these characters. They have a lot of growth throughout the three seasons, which is, first of all, you know, pretty amazing to be able to get that much character development in that short amount of time in a kid show, right? Because too oftentimes it feels like the characters they're fully formed and we don't have to do any thinking about them. But yeah, you're right. We go from Anne, who's kind of stuck up, kind of doesn't like this icky, gross stuff, lazy. And then by the end, she's like this warrior woman who is ready to defend the Nine Realms or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
And it's not even her either, right? Because you've got Sasha and you have now I forgot the other girl's name.
Marcy,
who also have their big arcs where some of them, you know, Sasha starts out as just this horrible person and becomes kind of a really nice person at the end. And, you know, the other one kind of, there's a dark moment, not to spoil it for anyone who has not
no, we can talk.
This
is what the name of this podcast is, like, spoilers, right?
right.
So
she definitely turns to the dark side, man. And it was when that happened and that part where she is quote unquote killed or, you know, maybe dead.
Oh, yes.
I'm like watching that with my son and I'm just like, are you sure you can handle this? He's like, Dad, shut up. It's a cartoon. But it is a big emotional moment that, you know, has an impact on these characters' lives. And
we really like swung for the fences on that. And, you know, the whole show was about these sort of long-term investments. Like it takes the entire first season for Anne to kind of grow accustomed to the townsfolk. And so what we did for all our arcs was that because each season was 20 episodes, the writers and I were able to put some like tent poles in the ground. So we knew by episode 10 of the first season, Anne is starting to come around to these frog people. Like she's just starting to come around. And that's like the first episode where she stands up for them. There's like these tax collectors that come and they're like, so like we knew that episode was going to hit right in the middle of the first season. And what was nice about that is it sort of defined the 10 episodes prior and the 10 episodes after.
Right. Yeah, because is that the one that introduces Grime's not introduced in that episode?
No, he is. He's in the second half of that segment. And because that's the first time we see Sasha in prison.
Yeah. And so the minute that happens, I think in that episode I knew, there's something big going on with this besides just, you know, goof of the week kind of story.
Yes.
And
and we love goof of the week. Don't get me wrong. Like that was our bread and butter for
fine
season
storytelling.
1.
I like it. But the minute that you introduce Grime and then, you know, you do get a little bit here and there in those first 10 episodes, as you said, of Anne trying to figure out, hey, you know, I've got other friends that are lost out here. Maybe they're here, maybe they're not. And then you don't. And then 10 episodes later, like, this one's in prison and she's pretty miserable. And then it's like, okay, what about the other one? And then you have to wait until season 2 and then you find out what happens there and throughout. It's great. I really you need a lot more credit than probably what people are giving you on building this story in a slow burn to where it pays off.
Slow burn.
Very well.
See, but that's the trick is that, like, you know, consumption habits are not there right now for a slow burn. I think that like Amphibia came out at the right time for that kind of story. I think if you released Amphibia today, no one would wait to find out what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think there's a way to bring that back though? Is there a way to make that must-see television happen?
Great questions. I mean, not yet. I think that the answer, the only like must-see appointment, like animated television I'm seeing is like sort of like independent. The amazing digital circus. Are you aware of this project? Of this?
I don't know if I'm aware of this one. Let me. What is it?
This is a YouTube show, and it is just so massively popular. There's merch for this show. It's just got legions of fans.
I'm gonna have to check it out.
Oh my God, it's so good, and it's so like inventive and fun, and like the pilot has like, I haven't checked in a while, but it has like 200 million views or something, man. Like it's a behemoth.
Let's look here. It is 6.3 million right now.
No way. For the
I'm sorry,
digital
those are the number of likes. Looks like 369 million.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Isn't that wild?
That is crazy. And I've not heard of this, but is this targeted towards young kids or?
It's teens. It's teens.
Okay.
And actually, I think, you might be seeing more of these characters. Like, I would say keep an eye on your local shopping mall and see if some stuff starts popping up.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's go back again to Amphibia and getting the start. Where's this idea come from?
Right. Okay. So, my first two pitches, one was like, they were both sci-fi. One was kind of a Power Rangers pastiche, and the other one was kind of like a Star Trek thing. Mm-hmm. And the network was like, no and no. And they were just very not hot on sci-fi. So I was like, okay, forget it. Sci-fi, it's out. Let's do fantasy. Let's try something else. And then I started thinking about like, what would I want to see? I really want to see a show about a character who transforms, who changes. Because my favorite characters in any media were always the ones who were like Loki or Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, these kind of like bad boys who by the end of the season became, heroes. And so I always thought it was more exciting to have a character who went through a big change than, again, like we talked about earlier, a character who was good and just gets like even better, I guess.
Yeah.
So I started from the point of view of what would be like the most fun to see. And I eventually just came up with this idea of like, okay, what if it was like a Lindsay Lohan-esque mean girl dropped into a Lord of the Rings world? Like, wouldn't that be fun? Because she would hate it just so much, right?
Right.
And then that would give her a platform to really become a different person. And so that was the starting point. And then from there, I was like, okay, a mean girl, Lord of the Rings. No, that's too generic. What if it's frogs? Because, giant frogs, that sounds really gross. Maybe that's great because the world will be more specific. And like, maybe there can be a scene where this girl is dissecting a frog before she gets transported, and we can have all kinds of fun things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and also on Gravity Falls, there was this character called Pacifica Northwest who was like a mean girl.
Yes.
But I loved her. I thought she was so fun. She was so like sassy, and like there was some texture there. You would later discover in future episodes that she was sort of under her parents' thumb, and you sympathized with her. And if you were really big brained, you started to ship her with Dipper. That was like sort of, what we were laying the track for. But I loved working with that character. So I was like, what if I made a whole show that had that essence?
So Sasha also is the meanest of the mean girls.
Yes, that's correct.
And
she's
I was reading through
girl.
I was reading in the book. It's like, oh, I enjoy writing Sasha because she's. What is it with you and these mean girls? Were you bullied? Were you bullied in school?
No, I was no. It's funny. I'm incredibly. I've always been accused of being very sassy and a little bit mean.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
all right.
I really related to these characters where I was like, she's not mean. She's misunderstood,
Yeah. So one of the things, we talked about this a little bit before, but one of the things that I really liked about this show is my wife is first generation Thai. Her parents immigrated here in the late 60s, and she was born here. And so our children are mixed. And so besides just saying Boon Choi.
Yeah.
That's not a name that keeps dropped. They don't keep saying it again and again and again throughout the first season or so
until season 3, and then they just won't.
Yeah, and then it's all over the place, and then it's like, and I think it was finally season 3 where my wife is doing stuff in the background and we're watching it, in the living room or whatever.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden we get to meeting the parents and some Thai words are being used, and suddenly we're like, wait a minute, Anna's Thai, and I think this is one of those instances where I think representation is really important. Because you don't see a lot of Thai characters in shows. But the minute that it's like, oh, this character is Thai, you could literally see a switch flip on.
Yes.
Where, Anna's definitely not my wife. But you can just see the switch flip on. It's like, oh, that's me
Yes.
in there.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's such an interesting conversation because, you just have to have great characters. You just have to have great characters.
Right.
And then like everything else comes sort of like some of my favorite representation in media is stuff like Lilo and Stitch, where like you're not even locking in on these characters' ethnicities. You are just watching this like wonderful story unfold. So for Amphibia, that's all we really wanted was that, hey, we have this great character story. And yeah, by the way, she's Thai. And it's sort of like the frosting on the cake. In season 1, there's tiny little hits of it. So like there's an episode called Lily Pad Thai where she like converts like a frog diner into a Thai restaurant. And that was really our only episode that really got into it. And that was sort of like, we have to do it because Lily Pad Thai is like a great pun. That was like the only reason. I was like, oh, well, we have to make this episode.
That's a great reason. But was there ever any pushback to that or not? Or
no,
they
they wanted more.
Okay. All right.
They wanted more. So Disney loves this kind of thing, and they loved leading with it for press. And actually, it was a little awkward because like a lot of our early press was so focused on the representation that like I felt like, oh, maybe we should just talk about the story. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, kind of vibe. But like, hey, whatever you guys think will stick. But sometimes I felt a little bit like I'm selling people on this very culturally immersive show, and then they'll watch it and be like, this is a world of frogs, Yeah.
No, and again, I didn't know any of the press about this until, I'm walking through the house and my kids are watching this. I'm like, what is this? I get drawn into that. So I didn't know any of this stuff. So, that's nice that for probably the bulk of the audience, they don't know any of this stuff until much later on.
I think I've gotten so many messages of people who are like, I'm interested in Thai culture now.
Oh, really?
I watched this show and like I saw them go to the Thai temple in season 3. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's because like the culture is there, but it's like it's a bonus. It's not like this is not virtual tourism.
Right.
Not really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. So it worked out really well, and I like that. And it could have been very easy for them to say, "Oh no, we need to make this character Chinese because then that will help us sell this in China a lot easier."
Yes.
And you don't Thai representation. I don't, save for what we watch on our streaming service that we can't talk about, where we can get stuff maybe illegally from Thailand. We don't get to see a lot of that. On regular media.
Totally. I mean, you can fact check me on this, but I'm very confident that Anne is the first animated Thai American cartoon character protagonist ever. Like I feel like that's easily
easy
to accomplish.
I'm sure it is. So hey, congratulations! You've got that star along with the mini awards, because this show has won a lot of awards too.
Yeah, so, we had a great time, and the critical reception was really great, and we have like a very like wonderful fan community even 3 years after the show ended, which is great. Which is again why we're making this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of wish that this book had come out sooner.
Oh, me too.
And again, writing a book and probably getting, I don't know what ownership you have over a lot of the behind the scenes art and sketches and stuff that's in there. If you, as the creator producer, own all this or not, but even tracking this stuff down. Yeah, that's what I figured. So tracking this stuff down and getting permission. Yeah. So that had to add to it as well. But I just remember. So, I'm a huge animation fan from, seeing Snow White in the theater as a little kid back in the 70s. But I always remembered like, oh, this would have been Beauty and the Beast era, Aladdin era, where Disney would release the art book to go along with the movie within months or within weeks of the movie coming out.
Yes.
And I think that there would be maybe, I don't know, it's been a couple of years since the show's been on, and I know that my youngest son has drifted off into more of an anime.
As well he should. 14 going on 25. Yeah, right,
exactly. And so I'm like, so are you still interested in Amphibia? And he's like, no, I liked that show when I was younger, and I can't wait to show him this book to just see if this brings back those memories. But I think that he would probably be more into it had it come out a little sooner.
Oh
so.
yeah, well,
and that's just me talking, but no worries.
You're
this
totally,
is coming out, and I'm excited about it. So
you're totally right, and I think that when it comes to art books, especially for animated TV shows, they're like really rare. Like for some reason, animated movies, there's a pipeline there. So like that does happen very quickly. Like any animated movie in theaters, like somehow gets an art book. Like I again, no shade on Paw Patrol, but I was like in Barnes and Noble and there was like an Art of Paw Patrol, the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, hold on now, back up. This is like a $50 like hardbound art book for Paw Patrol, the movie. And like, again, no shade, but like what 4-year-old was like, Daddy, I really need the Art of Paw Patrol for Christmas. Like, no, he just wants like the toys, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah. This is what grandma would give you.
Yeah. But like, for us, the reason it took so long is because it took years of sort of me playing like mind games and chess with Disney and with, demand to kind of get this thing off the ground. So like, Art of Amphibia is sort of like a miracle from my perspective, where it's like these books just don't exist, especially for Disney TVA shows. Like for whatever reason, like where's Art of Gargoyles?
Right.
Like where's Art of Kim Possible? Like these things, they don't exist. And I think it's because there's no pipeline for them. Like it's all just down to internal, groups and like what is expected. And, there's just this understanding that like, TV animation is something you watch and then you just forget about it. You know what I mean? Like it's art, but is it really art? And so like, I feel like by releasing a book like this, we are firmly saying like, it's art.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that's why I like this, because there's just like character designs, there's comments and thoughts on the episodes, what was going on. There's a lot of detail. I like this because, if you're just looking for something to flip through really quick and you want to see pretty pictures, it's got that. But if you're wanting some
sort of like
insight in it, a little bit, yeah, it's got a little bit of an episode guide without like spelling out here's what happens in this episode.
Totally, and for the book, we really wanted text light. Like we just wanted the images to guide. So like there is some nice text at the beginning of each segment where it's like, all right, season 1, here's the thoughts. Season 2, here's the thinking. But then like after that, it's just like, breathe. Here's the art,
It's been a couple of years since I've been able to watch the show, but as I'm going through this, I'm just struck by you used a lot of really dark color palettes for a cartoon show. Now, granted, you have characters like Sprig and Polly and Hop Pop that are, very brightly colored. But yeah, and you're in a swamp, obviously you're going to be using a lot of earth tones, but even then you like desaturated stuff quite a bit.
Yes. And you should have seen the first version of the show, Amphibiland. Like it was so like brown and desaturated and foggy and misty. They hated it.
Oh, really? Did you do a full pilot on that, or was it just this art? Was this concept art or a full pilot?
Oh no, there was an animated sizzle and a pilot animatic, and actually it's in the first section of the book. It's called,
I'm looking at it right now.
The Amphibia That Never Was.
Okay.
And everything was brown. Like the water was brown, the sky was brown. Like I just went too far into this direction of being like, it's so shitty there, like.
No, I can see that, but I also I like seeing this stuff too. Like I'm on the page where it's like the Amphibia That Never Was, and we see the first or an early version of Anne and now I forgot his name, and then we see them in their current versions, and it's like such a drastic look. I love that kind of stuff when I'm really into a show or a movie or whatever, where we get to see the evolution of the characters in this.
Oh yeah, it's the stuff on the cutting room floor is almost more compelling than what makes it to the screen. That's very common, I think, especially with film, where you're kind of like the looseness and excitement of a sketch is it leaves some room for imagination, but when you have to tie it down and then put it on a screen, it's just all right, well there it is, it's finished.
Right. And also you got to think of, is it going to be easy for people to crank out 40 episodes a season, or 20 episodes a season?
Yes. Well, and that's, also to answer your question about the darkness of the palette, a lot of that comes from our season 1 art director, Ian Worrell, who I remember telling him, like, you need to sell the danger of this world because it's not going to be in the characters. The characters are very cute. So you need to help us tell the story by painting a world that was a little bit spookier. Because if the world had been as cute as the characters, we're just watching gummy bears at that point, right?
Right. Yes, and I guess that's what if people think, the Saturday morning cartoons of our youth, and that you think of gummy bears, that's what this could have easily turned into as far as 100%. Color palette and design.
No, my one of my head execs, I caught him selling the show as Smurfs for the next generation, and I was like, "That's not it. That's not it."
Yeah, that would have been a disaster.
Yeah, that's not quite right.
But see, then after you get out of the swamp and you start to explore the land, then it feels, I don't know, it has a Ghibli-esque kind of
Ghibli
a quality
for sure.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah. We wore our influences on our sleeves, and I think it'd be fun to flip through this Art of book and really kind of point them all out. Like, that's Ghibli. That's Zelda. That's Mario, or whatever,
Mm-hmm. It's so cool. It's a good book for people to pick up, and if they're a fan, or even if they're a casual fan, I would say pick this book up because it is filled with really good stuff. And
that's sort
if you're
of
looking
like
for inspiration.
That's my pitch, is that like, you don't have to be a fan of the show to like this book. Like it tells a compelling visual story, regardless if you've seen, the show.
So you have had a super successful arc so far. Gravity Falls again.
Right.
Oh, you mentioned Owl House, another favorite of my middle
show.
schoolers here.
Absolutely.
With you, and is that Rebecca Sugar who did that one as well?
No, that's Dana Terrace.
Oh, okay, all right. So what is next? I mean, you've had just this, in my opinion, success after success after success.
Right. Which means it's time for the fall, baby.
Oh, I can't imagine. Well, then tell us what are you working on now, so we can tell you ahead of time if it's going to fly or not.
Okay, so because this is a comic book podcast, I actually have a graphic novel coming out.
Oh, I saw that, right? Yes, I'm excited about this.
Yeah, so that is sort of the resuscitated version of my old like Power Rangers pastiche pitch. So like, it's called Family Force 5, and it's kind of The Incredibles meets Power Rangers, where it's like a family of kind of multicolored helmet-wearing crime fighters, and it's about the main character, Maisie. She's like 15, and she just really doesn't want to be doing this. Yeah. That's like the whole story, and the whole story is about kind of her finding her place with all those expectations and just trying to be a kid. So like, that's coming out in June, and I would love it if you guys picked it up. Check it out. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, this is from Skybound, and it's actually from Skybound Comet, their child, their young reader. Yeah, their YA imprint, which right. We get their stuff all the time, and we're reading it. So yeah, definitely when this is getting close, you said in June, then we'll definitely want to talk about it on the show.
Oh my God, I'd love to come back and chat about it, because
definitely.
That project has a little bit, like, it's aged up a bit. So it's a little bit more for a 14-year-old, where it's a little bit gory. There's a little bit of blood, and there's some romance in it. And it deals with some heavier themes than Amphibia did. Okay. And working with the Skybound was just a delight. They were really supportive and all for. I remember being like, can we curse? Like, can the characters like say damn or something? And they were like, yes, but within reason. And I was like, oh my God, it's like Christmas over here. You know what I mean? So I think in the book, the main character says like, get the hell away from him. And I was like, ooh, my goodness. I'm Quentin Tarantino over here.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I saw that and I was like, oh, I got to check this out. So.
Yeah. It turned out the art is by Ainsworth Lynn, who's just this incredible artist. I think you guys are really going to be blown away by his fight choreography, like especially in the book. So we've got that book coming out. I've got a couple of films in development that I cannot talk about.
Yeah, I understand that.
But that's my next kind of like, oh my God, I would love to make a movie, and I would love for it to be in theaters, and I would love for like, you to see it at Christmas and stuff. Like, that's my next big goal, dream, is like, I'm just all about movies right now, trying to.
I kind of miss the days when it was, again, when Sleeping Beauty woke up and we got, the Ariel, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, all in the row, all holiday movies, all big blockbusters.
Totally.
To me, that was a wonderful time.
Totally. Well, if I may rant for just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that, we've got all these animated movies going straight to Netflix or straight to Amazon or straight to streaming, and they are just pissing them away. Like, these movies could have been making millions at the box office, and they're just not. So what you've done is you've sort of kneecapped this medium in terms of profitability. Like, you've paid a flat fee to get the movie made, but like, there's no second life, there's no residuals, there's no box office, there's no opportunity for this movie to kind of demonstrate how commercially successful it is. And I think that is just a damn shame.
I agree with you a lot, because there is a lot of stuff that just goes by unnoticed. Netflix, a couple of years ago, said we're going to release 52 movies a year or 50 movies a year on our platform. And it was like, seriously? Who's got time to watch all of that stuff with all of the other things that are going on? And then, the movie theater industry itself is having its ups and downs as to trying to get audiences back in. And part of the reason why I think some of these movies are not going into theaters is because, personally, in my rant, is the movie theater going experience is the worst. And if there was a way to change that, please.
Do you mean like people are on their phones now, or what?
I'm talking about people on their phones, sticky floors, just the whole people won't shut up, constant up and down shifting, 30 minutes of previews.
The previews are so long.
It's just ridiculous to where I don't like going to the movies unless I know I'm going on a time when there's going to be like 6 people in the theater.
Yeah, or they used to, and they went out of business, right? The arc lights, or I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know if
we don't have them here,
but
I'm familiar with them. So
there used to be kind of like a classier movie experience, which basically it was like in screaming neon letters. Basically, it meant there were no kids there.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just old folks watching like independent movies at the ArcLight. But
what do we need to convince the studios then to take these? And I'm guessing the movies that you're working on are animated movies.
Yes, they are. Yes.
What is it going to take to convince the studios and the theaters to put them into theaters and not go direct to streaming with it?
So there's a couple of things. For me, some of this is cost. The films have just gotten way too expensive. Like the average animated film, like the big ones that go into theaters, are easily cresting like $100 million, and that's just way too much. Because when the price is that high, the risk is so high that they can't invest in new voices, they can't tell original stories, because everybody is just so absolutely terrified that this thing is going to be a loss, right? So my pitch is always like, you got to make those $20 million movies. You got to make those $30 million movies, and you got to just put them in theaters. Then you can just have more. And then like, it won't be that much of a failure when they don't perform. You know what I mean? And we're at this place where technology is so good. A $20 million animated movie can still look great with great art direction.
I think so too. And especially, I don't know, in the 3D world, maybe you're already aware of this. People are just like, Blender. Why isn't Blender taken over? And why are people still
Flow,
using
man.
Maya?
Flow's
I know
awesome.
Flow is the perfect example of that. But I agree with you. I've been saying this for, I don't know, several years, many years now. And when I say many, it's probably around 10. More $50 million movies that are going to make $100 million than $200 million movies that are going to make $300 million. I saw somebody the other day commented that says, well, the reason is because there's a bigger gain when you spend $300 million on a movie and it makes $1 billion as opposed to.
That's the problem, though. The game that they're playing is for shareholders, and it's about exponential growth. It has nothing to do with, you know what I mean? Like,
I totally agree with you.
It's too big, man. The stakes are too high. That's why like every Disney film needs to be $1 billion now.
Yeah,
and it's like, if all your films need to make $1 billion, you've done something wrong.
What was the? Was it The Sure Thing? It's the one with Jennifer. Now I forget the actress's name. But she did this where she did full frontal nudity in it.
You're talking about Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence's movie.
That film
movie that was made for like $80 million or $50 million, and it made like almost $100 million on that. And
there you go.
That shows you that, a little raunchy comedy for a low budget can make a lot of money if you do it right. And I think with animated films, I would really actually like to see more animated films that don't look like they had to spend $700 million. And again, I like 3D animation. I love 3D animation. That's what I started to do when I was in college. I wanted to do 3D animation.
Oh, no way.
This was back when the only accessible 3D animation was Lightwave 3D. So I used that for, like a decade or so.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But I really would like to see the return to 2D animation. Now, I don't know if Amphibia was done 3D with a cell shader put on top or not, or if it was done traditional style.
It's done traditionally. So it was actually all done on paper.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, because that's
yes,
the other thing that is like
yes.
you don't see too much on. It's like, oh, let's throw it into whatever the current animation studio boom thing is.
I actually hold on.
Okay, we're gonna switch on the camera.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you something because I happen to have in this room. 1 second, I'm gonna go pick it up, but I have a scene from the show that got done by one of our animators.
Okay, cool. He's walking to the back of the room. He's picking something up. It's nice and big. He's bringing it to the forefront. It looks like a pad of paper.
Yeah, look at this. For listeners, I'm holding like a giant stack of paper. This is huge animation paper. This is Disney standard, and it's got kind of clips and cardboard around it to protect it. But for our last episode, we went to a Disney animator. Her name is Hyunmin Lee, and she's a acquaintance of mine. She's actually the wife of the art director of season 3, Sunjae Lee. And she's an incredible animator. She animated on like Princess and the Frog, and she was like the lead animator on Frozen 2. And so I just knew like we had to get her for this scene where Anne and Sprig are like saying goodbye. Yeah. And like they're hugging, and like there's like a giant, beautiful camera move going around them. So here, I'm gonna hold it up so that you can see some of this stuff. But basically, this is just me showing you. This is all real, man. Like,
I love that. That is great. That is nice.
Yeah,
and that's just the pencil drawings.
This is a pencil drawing, and if you look closely, you can see the red color rays.
Yeah.
So for listeners, I'm holding up a drawing of Anne and Sprig hugging from that animation. From that sequence, and it's paper. It's just, Yeah,
no, I love that. That's great looking, and so that's kind of what I was trying to get at is, I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I as much as I love the new Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, it's 3D with the cell shade thrown on top.
Yes,
and it's fine. It still looks good, but I miss the tradition.
Yes, I mean you are speaking my language. I 100% think it's time for 2D to come back. I don't know if it needs to come back looking just like a classic Disney film.
No, I don't think it needs to look like that.
It can look like something else, right? Something new.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think that it really struck me how Pixar films used to look so special, and now they just don't. And a lot of that, it's not their fault. It's just the diminishing returns on the technology where like now everyone can do what you used to be the best at,
Right. Yeah. Well, I hope that changes. Everything comes in a cycle. Maybe that's your pitch, the return to traditional animation. Stuff that hasn't been seen in theaters for 20 years.
I think that is the pitch. I think you start making great $10 to $20 million films with just undeniably great stories and characters, and baby, you got a stew,
Yeah. Well, Matt, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for this book to hit the bookshelves. And I think people should go pick it up. It's called The Art of Amphibia. And when your Skybound comic hits, let's have you back on and talk about it as well. So
it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Huge thanks to Matt Brawley for taking time out of his day to sit down with me and kind of geek out. I was a little bit of a fanboy because we really love the shows that he has worked on. And I would encourage you to go check out the Art of Amphibia book. It is out next week. There's a link in the show notes if you would like to purchase it. It's gorgeous. If you are a fan of the art of animation type books, this one doesn't hold back. It is a really great buy. And Matt and I had such a fun time talking with one another that there's more to this conversation where we talk about the CalArts controversy. We talk about casting. We talk about the Hollywood accounting. We talk about merchandising and a whole lot more. You can listen to the full unedited interview over at patreon.com/major spoilers. For just $5 a month, you get access to the full interview plus all of the other full interviews that we have done and a whole lot more. You get to keep this show going. You get access to special bonus features. You get all sorts of really cool things. I know we got a lot more to talk about in this show. So just do me a favor. Go to patreon.com/major spoilers right now. Sign up today for as little as $5 a month. Your monthly pledge allows us to continue to do great interviews like the one we just did with Matt Brawley. And stick around because I'll tell you who we're interviewing next week a little bit later in the show. Patreon.com/major spoilers. Thanks in advance. Okay, we are talking Ultimate X-Men this week. This is part of the new relaunch of the Ultimate line now that Reed Richards, a.k.a. the Master. The Maker, sorry. Too many M words. Are the M words Magneto, the Maker, the Master, the Murlocs? Are all
M
of the...
is a very evil syllable.
Is it an evil syllable name? Is it an evil consonant name?
It has a kind of a sinister tone to
Mutants.
it. Because mutants. But the M is sort of a noise that you're...
I mean, we always associate...
So Mal, right? MAL, right? Like malignant or whatever. That's Latin, I'm pretty sure. So there's a long history of like spooky things, either having the M sound or starting with the M sound.
Okay. All right. So maybe that's why we have so many villains with the M in their name, like Shadow King.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Maystorm.
Maelstrom.
No, Maystorm. That's her name in the
She's not a villain. She's good.
That's the whole point. It's an M name. So we are getting a second kind of reboot or a second retake into Everything You Know Is Different. And this time we're doing it through Peach Momoko's eyes, which we've seen her before, and we've talked about her books before on the podcast, where she is very much taking just Japanese manga, straight up influence, and just running with it. With all of her stuff. She's done this before with X-Men. She did this with, what's the other one that we did? I think it was just X-Men, right? Where it was the feudal Japan, not quite feudal Japan, but
like Psylocke.
Yeah.
And so did something else that she had, I think, drawn.
Yeah. Her stuff is great. I love her art. I don't think I have a problem with any of the art in this book. Do you guys have any problem with the art? I think it's well done. I really like the watercolory, colored pencil style that we have throughout this piece. I think the characters are all well defined. I think that we're taking some of the tropes of what we expect to see in a manga, except reading it right to left, and incorporating it into this book to where it definitely feels like something. This feels, you know what this feels like? This feels like bootleg Marvel, right?
Yes,
it's kind of like remember like Japan, they were like, hey, we want to do a Spider-Man TV show and we'll pay you some money, and Marvel was like, we like money, do you care what we do with this? No, we don't care what you do with this at all. And then all of a sudden
Stan Lee helped develop that
and then all of a sudden you get this Spider-Man show that has really
giant robots and aliens.
It has really nothing to do with what people expect.
I am an emissary of hell.
Yeah, it has really nothing to do with what we expect to see in a Spider-Man thing. And so Ultimate X-Men, this Peach Momoko, kind of feels the same way. It's kind of like, hey, do you guys care if I do X-Men? And they're like, yeah, sure, it's never going to come to the United States. And then it finally comes to the United States and people are like, what? That's just my kind of take on it. Bootleg X-Men. That's what this feels like, but in a good way.
When you say, do I have a problem with the art? It is weird for me because I have a dichotomy going on. I love Peach Momoko's art. I love this take. I love the fact that these are meant to be, tween-age, mostly girls. These are characters who are like 11, 12, 14, who look 11, 12, 14.
I mean, they're all in high school, so that should be something to point out too. So.
And these are all characters who have, important kind of roots that do make sense in a manga-esque style. And yet there's a part of my brain that kind of, when you say Marvel, I think Kirby, I think big, brash, those blocky designs and the bright colors and the broad pictures. And for me, the Marvel Universe is almost always, hey, how will this look on a page of the Marvel Universe handbook? And I think, okay, yeah, I can definitely kind of look at that. And the thing about Ultimate X-Men that is so confounding is that it is called X-Men. And as I read through this, I love it. I just cannot get enough of this, but my brain just will not call this X-Men. It's like I can't.
Well, it's the same way why
together.
When they first came out with Ultimate Spider-Man, there was a whole group of people that were like, I refuse to acknowledge this thing exists, but I'll read it anyway.
See, and Ultimate Spider-Man feels like to me, in retrospect, pretty standard sort of, hey, check it out. It's an alternate universe. Weird things are happening. This doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, look, now we're on Earth 982 and it's 5 years in the future and Spider-Man's daughter is now Spider-Girl. This feels like something completely different. When you see, oh, here's the Shadow King. Well, doesn't have anything to do with any Shadow King that we've been reading about for 20 odd years.
But at the same time, it has all of the markings of the Shadow King, because first time I see this overweight kid with a little fez and these things hanging off of him, I'm like, oh, this is the Shadow King, 3 issues before they name him as the Shadow King.
Sure.
So it's like the only one that I haven't really figured out is, who is Armor supposed to be? Is there an X-Men named Armor? Because I don't know. Okay, I don't know all of the X-Men
Armor
by heart.
Armor was a character that I believe was created for the
Joss Whedon run in 2006.
Anime. Oh, really? Oh, so it even predates the X-Men anime.
Yeah, but Armor is also one of those characters who, if you go through and you read X-Men, you know how there's always the Kitty Pryde, the Wolverine's little sister character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Armor is one of a series of those. So you got your Kitty Pryde, you've got your Wolverine, what's her name? Jubilee. There are a series of them. Armor is one of the characters who shows up and is like, hey, I'm now Wolverine's friend. Yeah, I'm Wolverine's young friend, and he's going to be protective. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Armor
I didn't know if Armor was supposed to be like a different take on the Juggernaut, and we are, just supposed to accept that she's not evil or anything like that. May Storm is pretty easy. That's Storm. So it was interesting to see these characters start to develop. And this first volume is only the first 6 issues, and it ends, I think, on a pretty good cliffhanger where we do get to see a Weapon X type moment in the background. We do get to reveal that there's a secret cult, the Children of the Atom. Starting to really, by issue 6, starting to really bring in a lot of what people will recognize as X-Men stuff into the book. But I like this whole buildup of, a friend of hers has committed suicide. She's seeing ghosts. People are starting to traumatize her in her waking and her sleeping times. She's got this little totem that gives her powers. It's kind of I guess I dig on this story in that it is not so much a rehash of what people know before, right? Because the new Ultimate Spider-Man is kind of that way, where it's like, we know who Peter Parker is and what he's supposed to do, and it's not until someone shows up and says, hey, would you like to be a superhero? Here's everything you need to know. This doesn't feel like this. This feels like something new and different, and ultimately not part of this new Ultimate universe, if that makes sense.
I do like the fact that they have, I use the phrase peeled off, and it's probably not right, but they've taken characters from the Prime Marvel Universe who we see in other contexts, like Nico Minoru, who was one of the Runaways.
Yeah.
Essentially, they're playing with characters, and it's throughout the Marvel Universe. You have these characters who are, Japanese ancestry, and they've put them together here in a way that's interesting. I don't know if you guys caught it, but issue 6 has the first appearance of, Stephen just referenced it. I can't remember what they called him. Akihiro is what they call him now, but he was Wolverine's son. They called him Daken for a while.
Yeah.
That's who that kid is. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they're they're pulling from different eras and different bits and places. So
Mariko Yashida is in this. Yeah.
Surge, who was an X-Man from the new X-Men era.
Is that a good person or a bad person? Because she seems pretty close with the Shadow King.
Surge in the comics, in the original comics, was kind of a jerk, but also not an evil jerk. She was one of at the time, the X-Men books were Harry Potter. So she was part of one of the squads that was not the quote unquote Gryffindor kids. And she was the one who was very xenophobic to Dust, who was the Muslim superhero who wore the full niqab. And she was the one who could throw dirt around and do the stuff. And she was
turned into like dust.
Right. And Surge, hey, that's why she has the name. But Surge was really cruel to her. So Surge was one of those characters that sometimes people don't like her, but she was always
she's off-putting in this. She's off-putting in this book as well, because you don't know what side of the fence she sits on. I mean, even the Shadow King, just because of the imagery, and there's some scary death-suicide stuff in this book that trigger warning, I guess, for people now that we're 15 minutes into talking about this. But the whole crux of the first arc is about Armor dealing with the death of her friend by suicide, and how could she have stopped it? Could she have prevented it? What's going on with that? And then as she starts to build up this friendship around her, these group of mutants. Oh, I like X-Men better. That the story starts to evolve and starts to build, and you start to see that there's a greater world of conspiracy and, people with powers and those kinds of things. But do be aware of that. But here, Surge is one of those people that you don't know whether she's good, you don't know whether she's bad, because she hangs out with Shadow King. She seems to not like him, but at the same time, she's going around and prostituting herself, I guess. It's the implication, right?
She's like it's like a thing. She's not having sex with them,
right?
Like that's she's like a companion.
Okay.
So it's like there's definitely an air of that, and I'm not saying like, oh, this is okay because I don't have sex. Like I think that the idea has a lot of like exploitation built into it.
Yeah.
This is a thing that actually exists, and it is like codified to a certain degree. I don't know that much about it, but I've heard about it.
Okay. Well, what did you like about this book, Rodrigo?
There's a lot to like here. I like that it is pretty much all girls. I like the idea that potentially if this ultimate universe really catches on and somebody is like, I want to write some X-Men stuff, it's like, okay, well, here's the ultimate universe. Just remember that the X-Men started out as a bunch of Japanese schoolgirls. So however you link stuff, it has to be linked to a bunch of Japanese schoolgirls, the original X-Men. Armor, Nico Minoru, and Surge or whatever.
Yeah, Natsu, who is totally not Cyclops.
Yeah, so it's I think I'm with Matthew in that I read this and I'm like, this doesn't feel like it's the X-Men, but that's something that I like about it. I like that they're like forcing it. They're like, hey, this is the X-Men now. What are you going to make out of this? And to me, it's a stronger like writing assignment than Ultimate Spider-Man, where it's like, okay, well, this book has Peter Parker in it, right? Like we're not actually venturing that far away from things. But this X-Men book has 2 X-Men in it. And they're definitely not your marquee X-Men usually, although again, Armor I think has really gotten a lot of play because she's like a less objectionable Japanese character than most Japanese characters that were written before her. Your Psylocke, your Sunfire, your Silver Samurais.
Silver Samurai.
Through Armor, we get a reconstitution of the Japanese side of the X-Men, which is ample. There's a lot of stuff that has gone on in Japan for the X-Men because the X-Men grew up in the 80s and ninjas were awesome. And it wasn't until like the mid 2000s that somebody said, "Hey, maybe white writers writing about Japan isn't that great. Maybe we should get like Japanese people writing about this, right?" So I like that. I like that this Japanese person writing about what she's interested in. And that's the X-Men, and you got to deal with it.
Yeah. I do like that there is this growing. I like the growing conspiracy part, right? I like that there's not just this suddenly the X-Men, come to me, my X-Men, and go rescue this the senator's son kind of moment in the book where it's just like these 6 issues and presumably the next 6, because I think we're up to issue 18 or something like that, or getting pretty close to it. I like that it's this slow build of discovery. Like first there's this one person with weird powers, then they meet somebody else, and then they're starting to see that there's a greater cabal learning on things. I'm concerned. Well, I'll be interested to see how they handle this idea of children of the atom, because in Japan that might have some very different connotations than what we say here in the United States.
Sure.
And so I'll be interested to see how that part is handled once that's revealed. I am very curious as to will they form a coherent team and have a mentor of some kind. I really like how this slow build goes, which is probably going to be my big complaint about this, is that if I were reading this issue to issue, I would be very frustrated because it is this slow build where you're like, I just want to get some action. And that's not what this is. So very much like manga is meant to be digested in these huge chunks, I think Ultimate X-Men also is best served in trade than in single issues. And I just kind of wish that Marvel would just say, okay, let's lean into this and just do it. Because at this point, 6 issues into this, there is nothing in this book that is tying to anything else that's happening in the rest of the Ultimate Universe. Now, I'm sure that will come together at some point, but when suddenly Black Panther shows up in Japan or something. But at this point, this feels like its own self-contained thing. So lean all into it, Marvel, and make it just like Momoko is riffing on, and just release it in manga-sized digest, stuff, and just let it be its own thing. That's my biggest complaint about this.
Oh my
gosh. It is going to be
interesting.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just had a realization. Mori is Molly of the Runaways.
That's Mori.
Mori, yeah, she's got the hat.
Yeah, that's what I like. I was like, oh, that's Molly's hat, and then they were like, they called her something else. I was like, oh, it must be a different character. Must be Louise from Bob's Burgers.
It just, my brain was sitting there and going, but the hat. What's with the hat?
Is that more distracting or more of the appeal when you can go into this book and go, okay, let's see if we can identify who all of these people are supposed to be from the 616 or, from whatever else. Because that might be the appeal, but for me, it's not the appeal.
I feel like it is a strength and a weakness. And I feel like when I read this, and I do read this a month or 2 at a time, I can't sit and read. Honestly, I can't read single issues of any of the Ultimate titles. There's just way too much interlocking stuff. And, I've been reading Ultimate or Ultimate Avengers or whatever the Central Team book is called. And that is so episodic that it literally feels it really feels like there's no continuity. So if I don't read back to back, I miss those, slender, gristly threads that hold the whole thing together. And so I feel like the entire new Ultimate Universe is best handled in larger chunks, but it's a distraction up to a point, in that my brain always wants to go, why is she reminding me of Cyclops?
Yeah, that's who I thought.
But once I have that,
that's what I kept thinking too. Is supposed to be
once I have that and I put that in play, I'm just like, okay, we're good. Yeah, okay. I think she is.
So what
her name? Well, her name means summer.
Okay.
Yeah, so I feel like
Matthew is on a delay suddenly, Rodrigo. Are you getting that as well?
Are you hearing me?
Just
we're getting you, but yeah, you seem to be a little bit delayed. Rodrigo, what is not to like about this?
What is not to like? I think a lot of the stuff that is to like is also not to like just because it's so stylized. Like, it's like, oh, here's this shadow guy and he's so creepy and look at his weird buggy eyes. But honestly, everybody has weird buggy eyes because, yeah, it's like you get close to them. Like, there's like a scene where like a character is running and it looks like both of their eyes are on the same side of their head.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. It's stylized, it's like that, but you can't, but because everything is stylized, then the things that are weird and supernatural don't stand out. Like it's a shadow guy and a girl with like red magical armor. Like you can tell that that's happening. But I find that like in a lot of the smaller things, it all kind of gets lost in the style. That's only kind of a nitpick. The other thing is like it is like I didn't go in with any expectations. But it's like as things are moving now, I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna move very slowly. Like me not paying attentionly slowly. Like having somebody summarize this for me laterly slowly.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's one of the things that I like that Marvel does that I don't know too many other publishers do it. I think maybe Dynamite does it a little bit. But I love the fact that inside front cover is here's your overall broad concept. Now here's what has happened in the story so far, and then you can just get into it. So, if you're missing somebody's name or something, I'm sure it's being mentioned in the recap part at the front of the book. So I do like that Marvel continues to do that. I think it's the smartest thing, and I think every publisher should adopt that just as a means of not only retaining readers, but also bringing in new readers who are like, 400 issues of the Wolverine. I'm not sure I want to get into this. So there you go.
Sure.
What else? What are some other things, Matthew, that you wanted to talk about on Ultimate X-Men?
The thing that is so difficult about this is people like to complain that the X-Men shouldn't be a superhero book. And I understand that. And I get that, it has become a metaphor for something different or something more. But when you look at, is the X-Men a superhero book? Absolutely, it is. It has been. But this is a story that kind of distills the core of what the X-Men has always been said to be about. It's, strange people in a world that fears and hates them. And so that world is strange, I think, to us as Western readers, but it also feels much more authentically Japanese than any of the Chris Claremont stories ever did. So it's kind of a back and forth for me in that I love what it is. I love sitting and reading this. I hate the fact that it's part of the Ultimate Universe. And I really dislike the fact, if they were all called the Children of the Atom, or if there was something that was,
if the book was called Children of the Atom.
Right. If this is an X-Men analog, but it's a world where, your Fantastic Fours and your Avengers and your Human Torches, they all didn't necessarily happen the way that we read them in the Marvel Universe. And so there isn't that expectation that Cyclops is a kid with a square jaw in a black and yellow costume. And, also a metaphor for whatever civil rights struggle is most appropriate. So I feel like this is a book that's really focusing on the human side of it. And, we have that human side
opera.
Mutants. Yeah. But the mutants are feared, and they're feared for good reason.
I don't know if they're feared, because this feels like this is kind of their big introduction. Like when Armor does her thing in front of everybody, and then May goes in and tries to wipe everybody's electronics. This feels like the first time the general public has seen this, and people are, I don't think, freaking out so much as they're like, what the heck's going on? This is weird. Like, especially in today's social media, you could see something online where someone, is about to be run down by a car, and suddenly they leap up in the air and it looks like they fly away or something. And I think people around the world would look at this and go, this is fake, or that's really weird, or that's curious. But I don't think people would be running around going, "Oh my God, mutants are here to take us all, and we should be hunting them down."
There's some confusing stuff because May is looking at like a picture of Storm in her phone.
Okay, all right.
And I'm like, is Storm already around? Or is this like a fictional character in this world? And Nico is like, you guys are mutants like me. So it's like the idea of mutants already exists. Even if it's maybe not a well-known concept, Nico knows enough to say that she's a mutant and that there are other mutants. Although, originally Nico wasn't a mutant, but whatever. Everybody's a mutant or an inhuman when they need him to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like that's not clear. And I don't think it's something that we're going to get to for a while in this book.
Probably not.
Because it doesn't seem that relevant. But yeah, if you're like, okay, well, you're calling that's the thing, is like you're calling this part of your Ultimate universe. I want to know how it fits into the other Ultimate stuff. Like that's the point of that line down the side of the cover that says Ultimate, right? So how does it fit in? And the answer is, look over there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's the Shadow King, guys.
Well, maybe what they really should have, maybe what they should have titled this is Push.
Yes.
Don't.
The greatest X-Men movie ever made.
Okay, so here's the reason why Maystorm idolizes Storm, even though Storm may not exist. Maystorm was actually created as part of the variant cover initiative that gave us the new champions. So do you remember when they gave us Spider-Boy a couple of years ago? Oh, a teen sidekick for Spider-Man. They started doing alternate versions of those. So there's like Hulkette, and the Scarlet Witch has Amaranth. Maystorm was part of those variant covers before she became part of this. So Maystorm as a sidekick or idolizing whatever it is. Somebody who wants to be the kid version of Storm.
Yeah, so Storm does exist because Storm exists in the Ultimate Black Panther series as a Wakandan freedom fighter.
You're correct. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, this is Earth 6160.
Yeah.
Which is important because
Earth
the original Ultimate. Right. Now, 1610 was the original. This is 6160. Like the Van Halen.
I see.
This is the 616. So every issue you're going to be like 616.
So bottom line for me is I want this released in the digest, the smaller format size that both DC and Marvel have realized are starting to be big sellers for them. DC has done this with a lot of their old collected trades like Watchmen and others, and they're finding out that those sell really, really well.
Whatever format Dogman is in, that's how you should sell your comics.
I think it's in the same size as most manga Dogman kind of books. And I think Marvel is realizing that too. I want this released as, digest size, 12 issues minimum per volume. And I want 13 volumes of this out now. So Peach, you've got some work cut out for you. But from what I understand and you know what, I'd be fine if Marvel wanted to lean full into this and do this on cheaper paper and in black and white. But what I don't want is for the creator to ruin their health and die early because they are cranking out 67 pages a day to satisfy fans. But this is that good that I want to read more of this right now. Rodrigo, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it exists in a strange twilight world between old school X-Men comics and absolutely not that. And that's very interesting to me. So I definitely want to see more of it.
Matthew, final thoughts from you.
People will complain about, we've brought this back and they're not, why are they even using the name if it's not the point? And this is the exact opposite of that. This is a revamped take on the X-Men that is somehow the core of the X-Men mythos, but something entirely new and entirely different. This is what people have been whining. Why don't we just create new characters and do new things? Okay, great. Here it is. And I feel like the same people who have complained about that will not read that and be like, no, I should never read this. You should read this. This is a very good book. This is also a book that I can't believe comes from Marvel. And
Sure.
that is a wonderful thing. I like it when we get things that are surprising and unique and weird. And I hope that this goes on forever. And I hope that it goes on well past the Ultimate Universe. And we forget that the Ultimate Universe was ever part of it. And then we'll just be like, do you remember when this was part of the Ultimate Universe? And everybody be yeah. Like when Hitman was a New Blood.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, like, if you think about the old Ultimate Universe, like a lot of stuff fell off, but then like we were still going strong with Miles Morales for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, do you remember when like that this came out of, like, what was it, like the 1999 or like 2000 Ultimate Spider-Man? Like, how does this even like fit with that?
Yeah.
I think there's potential for that, definitely.
Yeah. I guess the one thing that I want to see Ultimate X-Men do is introduce the Ultimate Big Hero 6 into this.
That's a great point. I know that we're trying to wrap up the show, but
I know, right?
Something that shines from its like absolute absence is, as far as I can tell, any Big Hero 6 characters. So that's interesting. It's interesting that they're like, let's look at all the Japanese characters, not you. Because I know they mentioned that the maker has like they mentioned Sunfire. Like Sunfire is one of his like enforcers in Japan. So it's like those guys are around, like the some of these Japanese characters who maybe we like a little bit less are actually around somewhere, but the Big Hero 6 characters are nowhere to be seen.
Two reasons for that.
And the Mace is a much better name than Mr. Sinister.
First reason I think that we're not seeing Big Hero 6 is the creator. The second reason why I don't think we're seeing Big Hero 6 is Disney.
Yeah.
So
okay, sure.
Those would be my two main reasons on that. But yeah, if people want to discuss that over in our Discord server, certainly get over there, because you can join the Major Spoilers Discord server absolutely free. Doesn't cost you anything to join. You get access to all the channels that we have that are public. You can talk about this show. You can talk about comic books. You can talk about the interviews. Speaking of interviews, next week on the show, Alex Segura is coming by, and we're going to talk about detectives and the detective genre, something I've been wanting to do for a long time. If you are a fan of, so again, people who are not part of patrons, let me just divert here. I know we're trying to wrap this up, Rodrigo. But if you are not over on our Patreon page, patreon.com/major spoilers, we have this thing called Book Club. And Book Club is a free show that I do with Brad and sometimes other people. I bring in authors to talk about their books. But that is a free show that you can listen to. Book Club came about because Brad and I started goofing on a series on Apple Plus. And we started creating a little show called Monday Mystery Matinee. And we talk about Lou Archer, and we talk about the detective genre and mysteries in general, which is ties closely back into Alex Segura. You'll find out about that next week on the show. Also next week on the show, we will be taking a look at the Great British Bump Off. Why? Because we know that you love comics, and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven, rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast, being shot up in a fun, be in the Middle East with Santo and Soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.